Welcome to the Innovative Leader Podcast. We bring you relational leadership ideas to navigate a changing world. And now for your host, Christy Geiger and David Phillips.
Hey, everybody, leaders. Thank you for joining the Innovative Leader Podcast. You're here with Christy Geiger, Executive and Leadership Coach, and David Phillips, Leadership Consultant. Every week we get together to discuss leadership topics, how to equip, inspire, and transform the way we live and work in order to make us better leaders. Today we're talking about the topic of 4 attributes of leading strong. 2020 has been a really interesting year with a lot of ups and downs and challenges, and leaders are really being called to lead to their highest potential. So today we're talking about 4 things that are really critical and important for leaders to continue to grow in your strength as a leader. David, what's your, so we have 4 main points.
Right.
David, what's your thought on that first point?
So the first one is a rigorous self-assessment and growth. So we need to one of the hardest things to do as a leader sometimes is to listen to criticism and not take it personally. It's just part of it's often part of our DNA. We just want people to listen to us and do what they tell us, do what we tell them to do. So one of the hardest things to do is to do that self-assessment and that growth assessment, because self-assessment leads to growth. Self-assessment, you take the time to listen to feedback, things that people say, listen to what they say, and almost and more importantly, what they don't say. And so as you listen in that regard, you hear what they're saying, and then you begin to explore, to examine yourself and ask the question, is that really who I am? Is that really what I do? And then what if that is, and what can I do to change? The other thing that we need to do on a consistent basis is to sit down from time to time. I think it's always a good practice to do this. Sit down from time to time and ask yourself, what am I doing and why am I doing it? I think those are 2 questions that we all need to consider. And take a period of time to write those down. Take a week and just write down everything that you do. Ask why you do it at the end of the night. Ask why did I do this? Why did I do it this way? What did I say? How did I handle this situation? How did I communicate this? Was this effective? And so you just kind of take a snapshot in time of the things that you're doing, the things that you're saying, and be detailed about them, and then evaluate, hey, where am I? And I think if you can do that, then you create an avenue for you to be critical of yourself, not in a mean-spirited way, obviously, but in a way that allows you to reflect on what you do, to tweak what you do, to change what you do, so that you can be more effective in your communication style, in your leadership style, in your productivity, in getting the things done that need to be done, and to offer growth and strength to the organization that you lead. I think all of those are important. We need to be, years ago, one of the I can't even remember the title of the book, but this was back probably in the early 2000s. There's a book written by a guy named Richie McNeil, and he said that the primary characteristic of a leader is the ability to be self-aware and to self-assess. And if you can't do that, then you really can't call yourself a leader, because you're not open to the criticism. You're not open to evaluation. You're not open to growth, because it really is a growth opportunity. These self-assessments listening to feedback is really a growth opportunity. And so I think we need to take advantage of that. I think we need to even schedule that within our calendar. I do it, oddly enough. I do it with a 6-year-old. There are days when I sit down and try to figure out, how can I be a better parent? Because I'm 51 and I have a 6-year-old, and so I'm so used to having freedom and most of my life and being able to kind of do what I want to do. And now I have a 6-year-old. I work during the day. I have time at night before my son goes to bed. And so how am I going to be the best dad that I can be? Because this kid's watching me and he's listening to everything I say. And so I think, and so as a dad, as a parent, you're a leader. You're leading your kids, and you're demonstrating the life that they're going to grow up emulating in many cases. So I think just taking that time and scheduling that time is really important, and it's necessary for us to call ourselves a leader and to grow and be effective in that role.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Yeah, I think an interesting thing too, and it's a good point about just with your son and getting his feedback and whatnot. I think because we really are in this changing time and this changing season of business and our world, that the skills of leadership are changing. And so, or that book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Just because we have developed certain skills and we're doing that really well doesn't mean that the time and the season doesn't now require different skills.
Right.
And so I think being open to understand where are my strengths and where are my blind spots. I like to think of it not necessarily as your weaknesses, but our weaknesses often are our blind spots. So we want to continue to lead with our strengths and help our team to be leading with their strengths. Right. But as a leader, number one, we need to be self-assessing where those blind spots are, because what's going to trip you up is likely your blind spot, the shadow of the strength, that weakness that is an overcompensation of that strength that suddenly has become a blind spot or something that you're unaware of. And now all of a sudden that is prohibiting your organization from innovating, or that's preventing your people from leveling up, right. Or that's preventing you from seeing a change that you need to make because you're really attached to an old way of doing something. And so the self-assessment isn't, oh yeah, I took those assessments and I know my strengths finder, I know my DISC, right. My Myers-Briggs, and all of that, good to go, check that box and move on. Self-assessment, and that's why I think we say rigorous self-assessment, is because you are on a regular basis assessing, where am I at and where do I need to level up and improve my skills for the sake of my team, my customers, my business, those around me, beyond yourself. And I think that's why too, sometimes you develop that inner circle, whether you're in a mastermind group, a leader think tank, an EO group or whatever. A lot of times the feedback, we want to get it from our team, but some of us don't have a team per se, like you lead in other ways that you're not able to get that direct feedback. But having feedback from other leaders is also important. Like, what are leaders noticing are skill sets that you need to be looking at? What is the self-assessment that we're missing as leaders today? I think is really important to look at.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Yeah, this is not like you. I like what you said. This is not, I've taken the Myers-Briggs test and done those kinds of things. This is a hard look at what we do and how we do it, and how we can do things differently and do things better to help our organization grow and move forward in a healthy way. So that assessment, that self-assessment is important, and it's not a suggestion box for your employees. it's open and honest communication, and develop those relationships where you can have that. I think the other thing is just far too often we surround ourselves with yes men or women, and we need to move past that as well. We need people who who have the relational bandwidth to give us honest feedback, because that's the only way we're going to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting point, because as leaders, we often don't recognize our status bias. And again, we've talked numerous times about the neuropsychology and David Rock's model of SCARF, and S stands for status.
Right.
And the status is when somebody gets scarfed because they feel lesser than or below. And so it is very intimidating. I mean, think about it. As a leader, do you love doing a review? Do you love giving feedback? Most leaders do not, because it is uncomfortable, especially if there is a critical growth opportunity. So what are we asking about? We're asking for self-assessment, not to be like, yes, you're a great leader. No, we're saying, where's the area I need to grow? Okay, well, that's tough feedback. That's tough information. When you have to give an area that is a vulnerability or a liability, if you're really giving good feedback. And so that has the likelihood of triggering a follower to be status triggered, where they're like, oh, I can't tell you that, or wow, if I tell you that, am I still going to get that promotion?
Oh, yeah.
Am I still going to get that raise? If I say that, am I going to have this opportunity, or are you going to look down on me? I know you don't want to hear this. I know this isn't easy feedback for you. So I'm not really sure if I can say that or not. Yeah. So we have to be recognized. So your point about developing those relationships where honest feedback is welcome is important. And the way that we do that is we have to watch the way that when we do ask for feedback and somebody gives it to us, how we respond. If we shoot it down, if we're defensive, if we rationalize or justify our behavior, those are all silent messages that say your feedback isn't really welcome, and your honest reflection of what's going on also is not really welcome, because I'm going to buffer that or reject it. Yep. So as hard as it is, we have to be careful for that status bias, because the reality is you didn't mean to create it, but you've got it. Yep. And so you have to be extra aware of how to reduce the status bias in order to get that feedback.
No, absolutely. That's huge. In our growth and in our own leadership practice, that's amazingly huge. Yeah, because we, the worst thing, the thing that we don't want to do, like you said, is just to even if it's unconscious, even if it's how we react with body language,
right? Right.
That will tell someone whether they're welcomed to communicate with you or not. Pauses, even those kinds of things. So we need to have not a standard standard answer so that it just sounds rote, but an honest, you know what? Thank you for that feedback. I'm going to take this and evaluate it, and I'll respond to you, and be honest in how I feel that criticism. Be honest in that criticism, and if it's wrong, I'll let you know. If I think it's not necessarily wrong, then we can have a discussion about it maybe later on. I think that there's a humility that is required in leadership for us to be able to do that. And sadly, people get to areas of leadership on charisma and celebrity, and humility, it tends not to be part of the leadership style of too many leaders. We are seeing that in our world today, just across the board, from those in the entertainment industry to those in all walks of life, where there is not a humility. They are at a certain they have a certain status. and there's not a humility there. And we've got to have that, and we have to see other people as almost, I think, my doctoral mentor, I may have mentioned this before. My doctoral mentor, the first day he walked into our class, he said, I am not your teacher. I'm your colleague, and my job is to learn with you, not to teach you, but to learn with you. And so that mindset of the dignity and the value of those around me and their life experiences, and that I can learn from them. I think if you have that mindset, then that gives you the humility to listen to the criticism that people may bring your way, and we just need that in our world, culturally, socially, but we need that organizationally, because there are a lot of people who are smarter than me. There are a lot of people who can do the job better than me. Maybe I have a leadership skill or a way with people, or just whatever that characteristic is that has put you in that place of status. But leadership is not status. Leadership is much different than that. And so we need that humility to be able to understand we need to learn and grow, and to listen to others who are in many ways as qualified as we are.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So just for the sake of time, there's 3 more points we'd like to talk about. And so the next one that we'd like to talk about is healthy accountability. And that accountability, a lot of times we can talk about, we've talked in the past about accountability being a bit of a 2.0 word, and that it's really more the way we see it. And that sometimes accountability is seen as the old school teacher. Did you get your homework done? And where is it? And that accountability feels like a punitive, top-down kind of accountability for getting stuff done. It is closely tied to micromanaging. Leaders don't want to be accused of micromanaging, so they often squish on the side of accountability to not be called a micromanager, because if someone is too holding someone accountable, they can be accused of micromanagement. Yeah. So what really does healthy accountability look like? Because in order to lead strong, accountability is absolutely required. And a lot of times we think that accountability is bad, and we think that accountability is not necessary, but yet as leaders, we find ourselves saying, wow, I just need people to do their job. Right. And if you're sitting there saying, I just need people to do their job, part of that is in this designed healthy accountability. So how do you have healthy 4.0 accountability? What does that look like?
So is your thoughts with the leader themselves or with the organization themselves? I think there are two.
The leader, because we're saying how do you lead strong? So if that leader is leading strong, how is that leader, even if it's just your first line, you're holding your team accountable, so they hold their team accountable, and it trickles down. So you're right, there's an organizational impact, absolutely, but it starts with the leader, right? Like the fish stinks from the head down, or whatever the saying is, right? So what does that leader's healthy accountability look like?
Yeah, so I have, so years ago, I had a friend give me probably one of the most important pieces of advice that I was ever given. And he said to me, he said, David, I need a coach. And he said, the reason is I have so many blind spots that I don't see. I need somebody to help me to make sure I'm handling the stress of life, the stress of the job, the being a good husband, a good parent, and handling that well. And he said, I see a coach every month, once a month. And I took that, and I thought about that quite a bit. And I think he was right on multiple levels, because we need. So I think one of the best things we can do is and this is not to try to sell services or anything like that, but we need a coach-like person in our life that can look us in the eye and say, you are not doing this right. You are not doing this well. And here are the things that you need to do to take care of that issue. And I'm going to come back in a month or a week or every 2 weeks, and we're going to discuss what you did, why you did it, and we're going to evaluate that. So I think we, having that ability to self-assess and then to take it to another level, to have someone who is going to keep you accountable to not only self-assess, but to the actions you're taking in a bigger bigger framework. I think that creates an environment for accountability. You need somebody who is outside of you, maybe even outside the organization. In some cases, it's inside the organization, because depending on where you are in the organization, you've got someone over you, for instance. And so, you may share with them. I tell my boss sometimes, look, I'm really hard on myself. I struggle with X, Y, and Z. So I need at certain times of the year, certain times in our season, I need you to kind of check me on X, Y, and Z. We have one-on-one calls every couple of weeks. I always ask them, is there anything I need to do? Are you seeing anything that I need to do? And because I know that when I ask that question, they're going to give me direct feedback, and it creates an aura of accountability for me, because now I'm saying, I recognize this issue. In a couple of weeks, we're going to check back in on it and make sure that I've cleaned this up or taken care of it, or we're moving forward. So I think depending on where you are in the organization, you're going to have accountability over you potentially. Even at the CEO level, you're potentially going to have a board over you. And again, that we see CEOs who think they can, who've put yes people on the board so they can essentially do whatever they want to, and that's never good. You need that accountability. So you have it inside the organization, and then you also have it outside the organization with someone that can essentially just tell you, you're doing this wrong. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to change, and we're gonna come back to you in 2 weeks, and we'll see how you did.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point, that accountability feels easier when you are showing up in a humble way, asking for it. Yep. So whether, to your initial point, whether it's that executive and that leader coming to coaching, where that is that confidential and that appropriate place to say, okay, I need to level up. So what's my next area to level up? And you're collaboratively looking for what is that opportunity. And it's not that other person is some expert in you, rather it is an outside perspective, right, in support to champion you to be your best. So you have to make sure that person who you're working with is having your agenda and your best interest in mind, because it's really about championing you to be your best. And accountability, so I think you're right, asking for it makes it a lot easier, rather than accountability is harder when there's not really an openness or receptivity towards it. Right. But then the other part that you brought up that I think is the most natural place for accountability is in one-to-ones. I don't think that's old or archaic. I think the one-to-one with a leader and another person, that you could be peers, you could be, whatever the arrangement is, it doesn't matter. That one-to-one allows for the integrity of doing what we said we were going to do. Yep. And the reality is, we're humans. We are not perfect people. We have lots of things on our plate. Things get forgotten, they fall in the cracks. That is not something to be embarrassed about. Obviously, you're doing your best to follow through and do what you said you're going to do. But accountability is just essentially having each other's back. And keeping that tight instead of waiting for that to be grossly overdue, or to be sitting in that meeting and called out where everybody's expecting that and you forgot. If you had great designed accountability, that's not going to happen, because there's a way that accountability allows everyone to stay in sync and to be on the same page. It allows to make sure that the actions that we're doing, that what we thought we communicated is what was understood. What I thought I understood is what you were communicating. So it allows misunderstandings to be caught earlier on. It allows the clarification. Here's where I'm at in this process. Is that what you were thinking? Are we on the same page? Are we on the right track? It allows that when I'm executing something that is still in alignment with the mission, the vision, the higher goals that are at play, and it allows us to stay on timeline. So accountability is such a fundamental 101 basic activity of performance, but we treat it like it's getting in trouble because we don't practice accountability till it's so far gone and so far past due. By the time you do accountability over here, it is getting in trouble. When you do accountability up here, it's not. It's staying in sync so that everybody elevates sooner.
Right.
So I think it's exciting.
Yeah, it's like being a parent, in that the more immediate the more immediate the discipline, the better it is, because you realize what has been done. And so I think that's why one-to-ones are really good. Review processes. In fact, the company I work for has moved away from a year-end review to month-to-month, actually one-to-ones, simply because the evaluation takes place sooner. It's closer to the actual issue at hand, and then tweaks can be evaluated instead of finding out 6 months after the fact that I did something wrong.
Right.
That I know it fairly quickly, and can either make tweaks or say, screw it, I'm going to go find another job.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a great point, because I think really when you think about it, not having accountability is worse. So you let someone go on for months, for weeks without being on the same page, and then you're like, oh, that was the wrong project. That's the wrong direction. That is so disrespectful. That is so dishonoring of their time versus having that accountability. And again, accountability runs so close to micromanagement, where when people are not used to accountability, they're like, oh, you're micromanaging me. Why do you have to know everything that I'm doing? Wait a minute. What is the difference between accountability and micromanagement? Micromanagement is telling you how to do something and being in your business of how you're doing it. Accountability is saying, are we on the same path? Because if I'm headed this way and you're headed that way, we are not going to end up at the same destination, and this isn't going to be good. So accountability is making sure we're headed the same direction. All right, real quick, for the sake of time, because I know we've got two more. So the third one is the ability to have tough conversations. This one is a big deal for me, because one of my favorite words, anyone who coaches with me is absolutely familiar with the word squishy. And it is not a super professional word, but I do not like when we have squishiness, because it sets everybody up to not be successful. And a lot of times we get squishy when we don't want to have that tough conversation, but a tough conversation is needed. What's your thoughts on leading strong and having tough conversations? What makes it hard? What makes it possible to have those tough conversations?
What makes it hard is you're dealing with a person, and you're dealing with a person who potentially has a family, who has maybe has all kinds of different things that you don't know about. I mean, you're coming at it from one perspective, and maybe you don't understand the entire situation. So there is so that makes it tough. When you've got to essentially tell someone you need to shape up, or we're gonna let you go. That's a really tough conversation. I remember actually one time having to make the decision to fire the guy that hired me. And that was a really tough scenario to be put in. It's just tough because so many of us like to be liked. And when we have those tough conversations, we can make people mad. And some people don't care to make people mad, but most of us really like to be liked. And I think that's one reason it makes it so hard. I think you have to have a thick skin, and I think you have to be able to say this. What is the best thing I can do for this person right now? And sometimes that is kind of coming down hard, and sometimes that is sometimes that means you've got to let them go, because what's best for the organization may not include them in the future. And that's probably another thing that makes it really hard is you're trying to balance what's best for them and what's best for your organization too. But ultimately, what's best for the organization is going to have to reign. That doesn't mean you can't be compassionate and help them find other things to do if that includes firing them. But I just think we struggle. We often wait too long to have those tough conversations, and I think it really damages the organization too often.
Yeah, that's a lot of good, right? We don't really know what's going on, so then we hedge on having that conversation because we feel like we don't know, versus what that's really speaking to is being in touch with your team, being in touch with your people so that you understand, having that relationship with your team, not wanting to be disliked, wanting to be their buddy or their friend. You're a leader, not their friend.
Yep.
It's kind of like I often relate leadership to parenting. And as a lot of times it's just the way it is. Like, you are not your kid's friend. At some point, maybe it becomes that way, but your job is to parent, not to be their friend. As a leader, your job is to lead, not to be their friend.
Right.
And while, yes, you want to have a positive and a great relationship, if your primary goal is friend and then leader, then you're going to have squishy leadership. Yeah. If your primary goal is leader and then friend, that will be much better. So it's not about wanting to be liked. I think that's great. Thick skin, the purpose, waiting too long, agree. Those are really things that get in our way. I think another thing is making assumptions. That a lot of times as leaders, we make assumptions. We think that everybody understands. We think that it's obvious. We think that there's no reason to explain that more, that that's beating a dead horse, whatever it is. So we make assumptions as leaders when we see a lot of things from our helicopter that people really don't see in the trench, but we're assuming that they know, they should know, that it's whatever. So I think those assumptions make it hard. But then kind of shifting when we're thinking about with tough conversations, what does it really mean to have a tough conversation? To me, sometimes it's not just about coming down on somebody. Sometimes tough conversations are addressing elephants in the room.
Yep.
It's truth telling and saying something that's a hard truth that maybe we don't want to acknowledge. Like, wow, you know what? COVID has really impacted our business and our sales are 50% lower. And I know that you guys are used to a great end of year bonus. I know that you're used to a lot of celebrating, but this is a different year. That is a tough conversation.
It is.
And a lot of times we avoid those tough conversations because we make up in our head stories about where people are going to take that. Another one of my favorite sayings are, if you don't tell the story, the team will. And I promise you, it's always worse than the truth. Yep. And so whatever the bad truth is that you're avoiding telling or dancing around or sugarcoating, if you are not clear, the team will tell their own truth. And it is always worse. The stories that they make up is always worse. So I think part of what it means is absolutely telling the truth and being honest and candid. But sometimes we just get squishy. We get confused on how to do that.
We apologize for having to do it. It gets, and so that just makes us weak in some ways as well too.
Yeah, good. All right. And then moving on, just because we have just a couple minutes left, so that number 4, I think kind of plays into it, is being that compassionate listener where we seek to understand. We're not that 2.0 leader that doesn't care what people think and we're just plowing forward, but we want to be that compassionate listener while maintaining a clear direction. So when the team says, wow, I'm really stressed out, this COVID thing, my kids are home, I can't work, I'm not going to be able to hit that deadline. And as a leader, we want to be that compassionate listener while balancing a clear direction. Because sometimes leading strong means holding the direction while listening and respecting our team. Sometimes as a leader, when our team is struggling, we can lower the bar. Yeah. We can get distracted of the ultimate goal and change our direction because we get confused by the feedback we're getting from the team. and it adds some cloudiness in that direction that we are headed for. And it makes us sometimes question ourselves, question the direction, question if what we were doing was right, question the timeline. And it can lead to a lot of thinking in a leader's mind where they're trying to figure out what's really right. So how do leaders lead strong, maintain that direction without getting off compass? Like, how do you listen to your team and adapt accordingly, but not get yourself into that spinning where you're asking yourself so many questions, you've lost your leadership? How do you maintain that strong leadership to respect your team, but maintain direction?
So I think one of the things that I think the biggest thing for me is to hear them, and then to ask, what do you think the solution to this is? And let them work with them to find a solution, as opposed to adjusting, just merely adjusting or giving in or lowering the bar. I think that if you can be solution oriented as opposed to reducing or backing off of expectations, or backing off of deadlines and things like that. Because I mean, deadlines are very real. Things have to be done by a certain time. Then the question becomes, what's the solution? Let's sit down, find a solution so that we can achieve both things, so that you can deal with some of the concerns that you have or the issues that you have based on your family, based on COVID, based on the financial situation, and then we can find the solution that kind of works with us to make sure everything is done the appropriate time and in the appropriate way. So I think if you focus on being solution oriented instead of just overly squishy, or just trying to accommodate everybody's issues, then I think that you can be strong. It shows shows leadership in the midst of confusion, and that it frees up. It makes everybody feel better because we figured out a way forward, as opposed to just backing off. So I think everybody feels like it's a win-win in that regard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's good. And the one caveat I'd say, like, you're asking their thoughts and their opinion, and you're asking a solution. And I think it's good as a leader. I think sometimes we forget to revisit the vision and the why and the purpose. So even if we're doing that on it, that would be the macro and the micro. So even if it's like, okay, so we're looking to get this out the door by Friday, I'm hearing that you've got a lot of stuff going on at home. You haven't had time to work on that. And we had this other project cut in line. So we wanted to get this done on Friday because we needed to send it to the editors for XYZ to be doing next week. What are your thoughts on how we get this to them, given that you haven't had a lot of time, but we don't sabotage the editor's timeline since they are slated and scheduled to do that next week? So exactly. Then you're conditioning, what does that win-win look like, instead of just, wow, I know you haven't been able to do it. What are your thoughts on how we can get it done? And they're like, well, give me an extra week. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. That's not really a win-win. Yep. So exactly. Kind of creating those conditions, or the reminding of the micro and those macro goals of, like, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want to get this out by Thanksgiving in order to do XYZ for our customers, right, or whatever. Reminding that macro, micro is good.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I know you have to jump. So kind of our wrap up, 4 attributes to lead strong is 1, rigorous self-assessment, 2, designed healthy accountability, 3, able to have those tough conversations and not getting squishy on those, and then 4, being a compassionate listener while maintaining a clear direction. We care about what you think too. How are you achieving those? What do you think is necessary in order to lead strong? Maybe we've missed a complete attribute that you're like, wait a minute, what about this? We want to hear. Put those in the comments.
Absolutely. And we would love for you to subscribe. So check out Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to subscribe, give us a review, and that way you get all the episodes when they release over the weekend or on Mondays. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to being with you again.
All right. Take care.
Take care.